Hi, John Herman here. Today we're going to continue our discussion. Last week we talked about Satan. This week we're going to talk about angels. Now, technically speaking, we talked about angels last week when we spoke about Satan. But today's discussion we're going to focus on the remaining 2/3 of the angels who were left in heaven, the ones who represent the beings that God created them to be. Remember, there are good angels and bad angels. They were all created holy, but sometime before the creation of the world, some of them, 1/3 as recorded in Revelation, rebelled and joined the leader of the revolt, who was known as Lucifer, whose name means morning star. Remember, God created both angels and humans, bestowing each with the gift of free will. So where does the word angel come from? The word angel comes from Greek and Hebrew words that both mean messenger. By piecing together bits and pieces of information written by prophets, famous Old Testament and New Testament characters, apostles, and Jesus himself, we can get a glimpse as to the nature of angels and what their function is. The Hebrew word for angel is always male, so that they are always referred to as being masculine in the Bible. But since they do not reproduce, it is probably a non-issue as to their gender, even if there is such a thing in heaven. In my opinion, it's not worth arguing about. In the first chapter of Hebrews, Paul extols the virtues and limitations of angels. For one, they will worship Christ, since Christ is far superior to them. In the letter's closing statement, Paul states that angels are ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation. Looking at Psalm 148, the book of Job, and the Gospel of Luke, we learn a few things. We learn that the angels were created by God and that they existed before the creation of the earth. Jesus said that we, as resurrected beings, will be like angels who do not marry, procreate, or die. It appears that angels can pass between the spiritual realm and the natural realm and can be seen by humans when they choose to allow it. Remember in Acts 12 when Peter was in prison. An angel appeared to him and led him out of jail after removing his chains. At first, Peter thought he was seeing a vision, but the prison doors opened and he was led to freedom. Unfortunately, the guards who were assigned to watch him did not have the advantage of a guardian angel, and they were executed. This brings us to the point that in the Bible, sometimes angels are recognized as such by their human charges, but other times they were disguised so well that they were not recognized as angels. Remember, Abraham had 3 of them for dinner, and Lot put 2 of them up for the night. In fact, Lot went the extra mile and offered his virgin daughters to a bloodthirsty mob when they demanded that the 2 strangers be turned out so that they could be raped. What's a life lesson here? Paul reminds us that when we show hospitality to a stranger, we don't know for sure who they really are. And yet at other times, they are immediately recognizable. David realized immediately that it was an angel who began destroying the people of Israel for his sin of taking a census. Also remember that Zechariah and Mary were told by angels, who they recognized as such, about the births of their children, John the Baptist, of course, and Jesus. This brings us to an interesting point. When angels appear to humans as angels, what's the consensus as to their appearance? Except for cherubim and seraphim, there is no biblical reference as to angels having wings. Although I started looking online to see what angels look like, images, and almost every single one had wings. Except for cherubim and seraphim, there is no biblical reference, again, as to angels having wings. Cherubim and seraphim appear to be two different types of angels rather than ranks. Cherubim can be regarded as guardians of sacred places or as a symbol of God's presence. Likenesses of cherubs appeared on the Ark of the Covenant. They adorned the curtains of the tabernacle, and they stood in the most holy place in Solomon's temple. They also adorned the temple's walls and doors. They were always depicted as having wings. The image of cherubs looking like small chubby babies is not biblical either. In fact, if you remember when God banished Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden, he placed a cherubim with flaming swords to guard the tree of life, not a little chubby baby. As an aside, just for your interest, the association of a chubby baby to a cherub intrigued me, so I did some checking. Turns out that this idea began when figures of naked chubby boys, often with wings, began appearing in Baroque art, both religious and secular. This image that was incorporated into the artwork is called a putto, P-U-T-T-O. Over time, it came to represent the sacred cherubim and represented the omnipresence of God. These images also evolved into the idea of Cupid, who was the son of Venus, the goddess of erotic love. Talk about sacred versus profane. None of this, of course, is biblical. Seraphim are only mentioned once in Isaiah 6, where they are described as winged creatures that fly above the Lord's throne and sing his praises. In fact, their name means fiery ones. And the implication is that these angels burn with love for God. They continually revere God and emphatically proclaim his supreme glory. Isaiah describes them as having faces, feet, hands, and voices, so they seem to have human characteristics. As far as a ranking of angels, there are only two ranks mentioned in the Bible: angels and archangels, which means chief angel. Only two archangels are mentioned by name in the Bible: Michael and Gabriel. Michael the archangel is portrayed in Revelation as the commander of the army of angels who expelled Satan from heaven. Gabriel appears to be the chief messenger angel. He delivered the news of the birth of John the Baptist and of Jesus. And he interpreted Daniel's dream involving occurrences in the near and far future. So, what are some of the functions of angels as mentioned in the Bible? Let's take a look at a few. For one, they announce and forewarn. Angels announced the births of some of God's servants: Isaac to Abraham and Sarah, Samson to Manoah, John the Baptist to Zechariah, and Jesus to Mary, and then to the shepherds. Angels also warned good people of impending danger, many times related to keeping certain people safe from God's judgment on others. For example, Abraham and Lot were warned by angels about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah so that they could escape. Joseph was warned to move Jesus to Egypt to escape Herod's wrath. And John saw visions of the end times as recorded in Revelation, all presented by angels. Another function is that they guide and instruct. For example, during the nomadic wanderings, God's people were constantly being led by and guided by angels. God said, "Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on your way and to bring you to the place which I have promised. Abraham repeatedly had conversations with angels. Moses received the law from an angel. An angel gave Manoah's wife instructions for personal care during her pregnancy and for rearing her son Samson. No wine for her, no razors for him. The angel also predicted that her son Samson would deliver Israel from the Philistines. Joseph was instructed to marry Mary by an angel. Cornelius was instructed by an angel to go to Joppa and bring back Peter. Paul received numerous instructions from angels, such as the time an angel appeared on the ship he was on during a storm and told him he was to stand before Caesar. Angels also interpreted dreams for Daniel, John, and Zechariah. Okay, another function of angels is that they guard and defend. The idea of a guardian angel has been around for a long time and actually has scriptural basis. Psalm 34 reminds us that the angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and delivers them. Concerning the guardian angels of children, Jesus said, "See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that in heaven their angels always behold the face of my Father who is in heaven." In Psalm 91, the writer lists a number of calamities that could befall someone, but then says, "No harm will befall you, no disaster will come near your tent, for he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all of your ways. So they will lift up their hands, so you will not strike your foot against a stone." Some specific examples in the Bible regarding defensive angels include: 1. An angel defended Israel from the Egyptian army during the Exodus. You recall the parting of the Red Sea and the army getting swallowed up. Number 2, an angel prevented Abraham from killing his son, Isaac. Number 3, an angel protected the lives of Daniel and his friends from the sentences of death. Number 4, when King Sennacherib threatened to destroy Jerusalem in the days of Isaiah, the situation for the Israelites looked hopeless because they were vastly outnumbered. But then the angel of the Lord went forth and slew 185,000 warriors in the camp of the Assyrians. They quickly retreated, leaving Jerusalem unscathed. And a final example, in the Garden of Gethsemane, upon Jesus' arrest, right after Peter had attempted a defense of him, Jesus said, "Do you think I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels?" All right, another function, they minister to those in need. Some examples of this type of service would include: 1, the angelic care administered to Hagar and her young son Ishmael when they were threatened by thirst and starvation in the desert. You recall they were banished by Abraham because his wife Sarah was jealous of her having a child. Number 2, the feeding of Elijah as he sat under a broom tree, tired, fearful, lonely, and wanting to die. And a third one would be the care given to Jesus after he had spent 40 days in the desert. In all of these cases, care on a very personal basis was given by an angel. All right, angels can be instruments of God's judgment. Finally, we see that angels can be used to carry out God's judgment. This is not exactly the role one thinks of when imagining a sweet little angel. In the Old Testament, we see an angel killing 70,000 Israelites as punishment for King David taking a census. In fact, the only reason the angel stopped his killing spree was that God stopped him. Enough was enough. There are also numerous examples of judgment in the New Testament, as when King Herod was slain by an angel for not giving God glory. The people spoke of him as a god after he had given a speech, and he took that credit. Immediately, an angel struck him down, and he was eaten by worms. In Revelation, there are many examples where it predicted that angels will carry out God's judgment in the last days. For example, an angel will bind Satan and throw him into the pit at the last battle, when Christ and his armies finally defeat Satan. Now, you may not have ever even noticed this, but in the Old Testament, there's mention of a particular angel known as the angel of the Lord, as opposed to simply an angel. This angel seems to be rather unique and is mentioned 65 times in the Old Testament. This angel sometimes introduces himself as deity, but at the same time is distinct from God. Let me give you some examples. Remember the story of Hagar, who was actually helped by angels on 2 different occasions. We talked about one a few minutes ago. In this first case, she had run away from Sarah because she was being mistreated, and she found herself on the verge of death in the wilderness. Remember, she was pregnant with Abraham's son at the time. An angel of the Lord appeared to her and told her to return to her mistress. In the conversation, the angel said to her that I will increase your descendants, that they will be too numerous to count. Only God could make that promise. Notice the pronoun I. Further, after the angel had predicted some events of her unborn son's life and what his personality would be like, Hagar replied, "You are the God who sees me." For she said, "I have now seen the one who sees me." Only God could have predicted the future. In another example, when Abraham is about to sacrifice his son Isaac, the angel of the Lord appeared and stopped him, saying, "Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son." A short time later, the angel reappeared and said, "I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky." Notice that these pronouns are in the first person. In one more example, recall the account of Moses at the burning bush. Again, the angel of the Lord appeared to Moses in the bush and identified himself by saying, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. There are dozens of more examples. It would seem that this angel did things only God himself could do, such as forgiving sins and predicting the future. Since no one can see God and live, some believe that this angel may have been some sort of an avatar for God, so that God could interact directly with humankind. Quite a few scholars actually believe that this particular angel was in fact the pre-incarnate Christ. So, in conclusion, what are some takeaway ideas? Here are some that strike me. 1, angels do exist and have been created by God to serve and implement his ultimate plan. They deserve our greatest respect. They have God-given powers to destroy as well as to heal. Angels cannot act outside of God's will, and as we saw last week, that includes Satan and his minions. The difference between good and bad angels, to me, boils down to their motivation for acting. In one case, God is directing their actions. In the other, he is allowing their actions, but only up to a point. In one case, we see worship and allegiance to God. In the other, rebellion and pride. In this day and time, with the world as crazy as it is right now, I prefer to leave you with this thought from the words of Psalm 91. "For he will command his angels concerning you, and to guard you in all of your ways."